What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Yes, we're back with another monster discussion. It hasn't been long since we did one, but that is where I ducked up. That's right, I ducked up, guys. What did I do? What did I do, you might be wondering. Well, the latest monster discussion we did was over the NEOSTONE agent, correct? I realized right after posting we were supposed to do the NEOSTONE fighter. I always mix their names up. And I think it would be a little bit unfair to move on with the monster discussions before I go over the fighter, since many of the players that actually voted for the NEOSTONE fighter way more than all of the other choices, which is why I thought the agents got so much love. But it's actually the fighters, the NEOSTONE fighters, that were getting crazily voted for. So the poll is still up. It is still going to be between the mermaids. Let me pull them up here so you can get a visual for new players. Still going to be between mermaids, dragons, and sea emperors. So go ahead and vote for that. I'll have the poll listed in the comment section below. You guys can go vote on that. That will be for the next monster discussion after this one. So for those that were waiting for the NEOSTONE fighter, here's the video. I'm sorry about that. I always mix their names up. I swear it wasn't on purpose. So the NEOSTONE fighters are mainly attack-based monsters. You see them, they're a 4-star, so we're going over our second 4-star today. And they were added with the NEOSTONE agents, and that's why a lot of people got mixed up with them when they first came out. And of course, they actually have some pretty nice stats. So we're going to look at these. We're going to look at the awakened versions, and let's go ahead and check them out. So I think same thing with all of the NEOSTONE agents get awakening. They get leader skills when you awaken them. So do the NEOSTONE fighters. So they all get leader skills. That kind of boils down to like how they don't get stat increases just because of their awakening ability. They do get it based on their base stuff, right? Everyone knows that when you awaken a monster, they get more HP, more attack, more defense, more speed. But when you awaken a monster, it can either give you a new leader skill, it can give you resistance, crit rate, stuff like that. Most of the time, you're going to want to go for like crit rate or speed. But when you get a leader skill upon awakening ability, it kind of takes away from bonus stats that you could get in the percents. So you're not going to get increased critical rate, you're not going to get increased accuracy, you're not going to get increased resistance, you're not going to get more speed. So that kind of, right off the bat, just like the NEOSTONE agents, that kind of tears them down a little bit in quality, just a tiny bit. But it doesn't make them useless at all, whatsoever, okay? So the first one up is Trevor. Trevor, it's only showing it at max level 35, so don't take his base stats as a final thing. Obviously, you can get it way higher than that. I think just looking at his stats, he could probably get into like 8,000, maybe more HP. His attack will probably be around in the 700s, maybe more. Defense will be a little bit higher, not much, and then speed will be the same. So the speed, right away, you notice that speed is actually pretty high for an attacker, which is nice because he doesn't get any speed upon awakening. So 107 speed right there. That is pretty ballsy to put on Trevor. Okay, let's look at these attacks. Swings a dagger to attack the enemy 2 times and subsequently increases your attack power for 2 turns. So this is a self-buffing attack buff on the first skill. Now I don't think this is something that goes after. I think this actually... Oh, no. You attack for 2 turns and then buff your attack power. So that's where the big words come in. If you're not, a native English speaker, subsequently, it means after your attack, you're going to be buffing your attack power. Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that is how it is. Every time I've attacked Trevor, that is how it appeared to me. Now, the first buff and then attack comes from the second skill. We'll go over that in a bit. So when you swing your dagger, you basically hit 2 times and then buff your attack power. So this is a setup for your next attack. So you don't have to worry about bringing any attack buff if he's going to be your solo nuker. This is actually going to be quite nice for a lot of situations, including live arena. You're not going to have to bring any buffs or anything like that because he's going to be doing it. All you need to do is bring defense break. Second skill is increases the critical rate for 2 turns and instantly attacks an enemy with a powerful strike. So not only is this going to be pretty freaking strong, which I think it goes down to 2 turns maybe. Maybe it doesn't. You guys should tell me on that. I don't have Trevor either. It kind of sucks that I don't, but nothing I can really do about that. So if it goes down to 2 turns, let me know on that. But you do increase your own critical rate for 2 turns with this attack and then instantly attacks an enemy with a powerful strike. If this is a 2-turn cooldown, you're most likely going to always have critical rate on you. You might have one turn here or there, but the majority of the times you're going to be having critical rate buff. Now the reason I say you might not have it on all the times is because maybe you go from your third skill, or no, it's a passive. Okay, interesting. Well, maybe your AI doesn't use it, but if this is a 2-turn cooldown, then this will be a pretty freaking awesome skill. So now you get your self attack buff, self crit rate buff, which is all you can ask for on a nuker, pretty much. Now you just need defense break. So it ties in with his passive. As your HP decreases, your attack power will increase and the damage you receive will decrease. This makes him more tanky. His attack power will be a lot higher. I think this guy has some pretty incredible multipliers. I'm not kidding. I've seen him hit for freaking really hard. And when he first came out, everyone was going crazy over him, building him like crazy. So if you have him, definitely I would make it a side project. It's not something you want to rely on too much since it is a single target nuke and he's not fully tankable. Like he's not some type of bruiser or something like that where he can really tank and do tons and tons of damage without cooldowns. But the fact that he can reduce incoming damage as he gets lower and his HP and attack power, the whole relationship is actually pretty strong, including an attack power buff for Arena, or I should say leader skill for Arena. This is actually a really strong candidate for live Arena if the leader skill works, and for mid-game, even beginner level Arena. Like, this guy can really do some damage. So definitely a very strong monster. Next one, Hollow Hero monster, very underrated, is actually Ryan. Now check this out. He has almost the same amount of defense, 80 less defense. He has more HP, more attack power, and then same amount of speed as Trevor. The difference is he doesn't have a passive ability. So it's the same first skill, where he self-buffs his attack power. Then he does a different second skill. So attacks an enemy, inflicts continuous damage for 2 turns. This attack will also decrease the enemy's defense for 2 turns if it lands as a critical hit. So you want high crit, really high crit, but you can't self-buff crit. So you can't rely on that. You're going to need some high crit. Now, this is mainly a dungeon monster, obviously given by his leader skill. You can use him in other places, but same attack power leader skill for dungeons. I see a lot of people using him for Famon farming and for Dragons B10. I see some people use him in Arena, but not many people use single target nukes for water damaging. And that's just because there's so many out there with like Theomars, Sigmaris, a lot of easier obtainable monsters. You don't really see Orion fit that role too much. But he does have an interesting kit for dragons if you want to use him early on. He puts on dots and decreases the defense if he hits critical hit, which he does get attribute advantage on the dragon boss. He does buff his own attack power, so you don't have to rely on any type of attack buff to take up a slot on your dragon's team. And his third skill, where he swiftly attacks the enemy 3 times with each attack inflicting continuous damage for 1 turn. And if he lands as a critical hit, you also disturb the target's HP recovery for 2 turns. Now, the disturbing the HP recovery, not something that you don't really see that much. You could use this in Necro maybe, if you wanted to use that there. This is not going to be good in Rift because he mainly does a lot of damage for dots, and you can't inflict any continuous damage effects on Rift. But in Dragons B10, maybe Necro, if you really made it work with a single target attacker, you could potentially do it. And the fact that he puts on so many dots, it's like a little Orochi version for Dragons B10, to be honest. Now, do I suggest building him right away? Probably not. If you pull him early on, he's going to help you, but is he going to help your progression in dungeons and stuff like that? Insignificantly amount to the Veramos and Belladion and stuff like that. The amount of progression you get from building him and 6-starring him is not nearly as much as you would from progressing with something else like Beretta or Veramos, where you can actually use them in other parts of the game. So I would say Ryan, he's got potential. He seems like a good monster. And in some scenarios, he could be good, but I don't think he's exactly necessary to build. And some people can definitely have fun with him, though, so don't take it that wrong way. I think he's an okay monster. He just needs a place in the game where he really shines. And for progression, he's just not that monster. The next one is Logan. I've seen some people build him, not as many as I've seen people build Ryan. Now, we check this out. He's got a little bit less of attack power and HP as Ryan, but he does have a little bit more defense. So he's like right smack dab in the middle of Trevor with the same attack power. So basically, like the same thing when I was talking about the agents, similar situations where he's in the smack dab in the middle, same speed. I think they all have 107 speed. That's awesome. So this is for guild battles. So this is going to be a guild battle oriented monster for the most part, for what we see. So same first skill, attack buff. Second skill does the continuous damage effects, which is always nice. If you crit hit, you'll do your own defense break, which is incredible. You get your own attack buff and you put on your own defense break. That's always nice. And you get an attack power leader skill for guild battles. Third skill is different. It attacks an enemy 2 times and decreases their attack speed for 3 turns. Each hit will also decrease the enemy's attack bar by 30%. If the enemy's attack bar gets depleted by this attack, you will instantly recover your turn. Now, I don't know how I feel about this. The fact that he does continuous damage on the second skill kind of wastes it for any scenarios like Rift or maybe even Trial of Ascension, since this is an attack bar depletion type skill. The thing was with this, when you go into stuff like Trial of Ascension and even in Rift, when you're dealing with reducing the attack bar, it has to be something that's very, very instantly recoverable like Hua, and that way you can use it consistently, or something that is so good on such a short cooldown, or is like AoE effect, like let's say Verad or even Wuchi for those types of monsters, that when you get monsters like this that have a cooldown based skill where they reduce the attack bar and it's not even that much, it kind of loses usability. You know, you've got stuff like Basalt that can do an AoE attack bar reduction, you got Verad, you got Wuchi. You even have stuff like Woonhawk, who doesn't reduce the attack bar, but actually does have some consistent stuns, which is easier to obtain than Logan. So I wouldn't say he's actually close to a PvE monster. It seems like he's more of a PvP monster. But as a win monster, there's some other options out there like Amir, and even non-farmable or non-obtainable monsters like Lucian, or even like 5 stars like Ethna that bring a better Theo killer. You know, this I would say essentially is supposed to be some type of Theo killer for Guild Wars, but again, there's many other monsters that can really take the cake. So I wouldn't say he's horrible, but I just feel like he lacks a lot. If there's people that use him, I want to see how you guys use him, because I don't see this attack bar depletion being any useful on stuff like Theomars. Maybe it can be on other types of monsters where you can prevent healers. You can bring your own defense break and continuous damage effects, which does actually add quite a bit damage, which is really nice. And then of course he self-attacks buff, but you'd have to get all 3 turns in, because first off you got to put on your attack power, then you got to put on the defense break and the continuous damage, and then you got to do your 3rd attack, and by the time it goes through, maybe they've already procced out of it with violent runes where you're not going to see it anymore, you're not going to have the defense break on there, and maybe they removed your attack buff. You don't know. These situations are unknown, so it's very situational. So careful with building something like Logan, where if you are going to build him for his sole purpose of being able to put on his own buffs and debuffs, you have to be careful, because you never know what the situation is going to be. The next one is Lucas, something that I think is actually really cool and really interesting. Definitely not the best one, but not a bad one. So an attack buff on the first skill, like normal. And then this one goes back to the continuous damage and the defense break, which is of course always nice to have. If you can violent proc off of this one to the first skill, which is always nice to have. Now the third skill is a passive skill. The attacks performed on your turns will generate a shield that lasts for 1 turn. The shield is equivalent to 50% of the damage dealt. And this effect increases your critical rate by 30%. So not only do you get a 30% crit rate buff, your leader skill is universal, so you can use this anywhere you want. Attack power increased by 25%, you know, you use that where you want it. And it is actually, I think that's pretty good for a 4-star monster. Not bad at all. If you need it somewhere, you can use it there. It's not specifically a single rolled leader skill. Now the thing with the passive skill is it increases the crit rate by 30%. That is crazy. That is absolutely insane. So that is a really good passive ability right there for the crit rate. On top of that, you can survive a bit longer. This is, I would say, Lucas is like the perfected version of Conrad. And the reason I say that is because the reason I don't like Conrad is not because of like his skill set or stuff like that. It's because his 3rd skill is on such a large cooldown that putting on a shield to keep yourself alive is not as reliable. Whereas this one, maybe it's not an AoE buff for your team, but Lucas is your nuker here, and he can actually help survive by putting on his little shield. Let's say he does 10k damage, which is very low. You should be hitting, you know, way more than that. I would say into like the 20ks and stuff like that. That's a pretty damn strong shield. That's reaching up there with Rina's shield, because Rina has a percent on her HP, but it is a low percent. This is 50% of the damage he deals. Now, granted, you do have to set him up, but an attack buff, and he brings his own defense break. I think he's pretty underrated in terms of the NEOSTONE fighters, but I think a lot of people just kind of turn away from his shield, and that's because it's based on the attack power and the fact that it's a single target nuke. Obviously, single target nukes are something that people try to stay away from, since you definitely want to get rid of all of the units as fast as possible by using AoE nukers. But if you need to bring single target, it definitely is something that you can look at if you have him. Now, the last one is Carl. Carl, my babe, Carl. Honestly, everyone that knows the NEOSTONE fighters knows Carl is pretty freaking awesome. If I am correct with his skills, he will be pretty intense. So the first skill, attack power buff, yep, like normal. Second skill, it does increase his own crit rate, which in my opinion, it's better than the whole defense break thing. I think the increased crit rate is just absolutely amazing to keep. If Lucas would have had the increased crit rate, that would have been really intense, because he gets 30% increased crit rate here, and then he gets more here. You can really stack some really high attack power and high crit damage. So with Carl, he increases his own crit rate and attacks instantly after that, okay? This is the skill we'll be looking at. Performs an attack that ignores all damage reduction effects, and it lands guaranteed as a critical attack. That means you're always going to crit on it. You don't have to worry about crit rate so much on this. You do get your own crit rate boost. You already get your attack power buff. That is incredible. You can basically just stomp through any Darians, any Diases, which are starting to become more prevalent in Arena and Guild Wars. I don't know why, but definitely a lot of them are starting to appear. And anything that has like defense buff, any of that, defense buff also counts as that. And so I'm pretty sure that's how it'll go through the defense buff. So, I mean, seriously, a guaranteed crit attack. I think that's awesome. And then he gets, of course, the universal attack power leader skill, which is obviously the best option out of all of these, right? You definitely want universal leader skills. So he brings definitely the lowest attack power out of all of them, and he doesn't even bring the best HP. He brings decent defense, he brings a decent HP, and decent attack power. If you can build him correctly with the right runes, he can actually be a pretty terrifying force. Out of all of them, I don't know. I'm going to have to say it's a tie between Carl and Trevor. Maybe with the right runes, I think Trevor might be more consistent damage, but with the right runes, I think Carl might have more damage single targetly, because honestly, this third skill, I've seen it hit pretty freaking hard. So I'm going to have to say it's a tie between the two. I'm sorry, I can't decide. As far as the least useful one goes, I'm going to have to go with the wind one. You guys might not agree with that. I don't know who uses it. If you guys use it, let me know, because I have no idea where you would use that. And honestly, Logan doesn't have a bad skill set per se, but I think he's still lacking in a little bit of usability. So maybe he'll get a part in the game sometime in the future. So that's what I think about the NEOSTONE fighters. Again, we're going to be doing the mermaids versus the dragons versus the sea emperors. I'll leave the poll in the comment section below. Let me know what you guys think. Sorry again for mixing up the agents with the fighters. It happens. I'm sorry. Actually, no, it doesn't happen. It only happens with these two monsters. What am I talking about? I always screw these names up. Alright guys, I will see you all in the next episode. Stay awesome.